the Everything But Politics podcast.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Everything But Politics podcast. Very exciting episode today, as we are pleased to welcome Josh Moser to the show. Josh, thanks for joining us, man.
Of course, guys. Happy to be on.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure. And Josh, I guess before we kind of get into it, why don't you give our listeners a little background on who you are, your background, and how you got into the world of sports?
Sure. So I currently am the main sports anchor at the Fox affiliate in Miami, WSVN. Miami, probably the best sports city in the country, in my opinion, right now, with the way the Heat Panthers are playing. Dolphins are potentially Super Bowl contenders here at 2-0. Tua is the MVP favorite. I took over for Steve Shapiro, who was here for a long time. The highlight of this job is working with Drew Rosenhaus. We have the top-rated Sunday night show called Lexus Sports Extra that not only airs here, but in South America. It's in the Caribbean. You can see it in Key West. So almost a regional advantage there. And I'm originally from Southern California, got into sports really as a fan, growing up playing as a kid. And that's how I made all my friends. It was kind of part of my culture. And then I went to college, was able to play baseball for a little bit in college at the Division II level. And then I went to USC, got a master's degree at USC. And then from there, just networked. And I started working for the athletic website there, ended up working for the NFL Network, and then got onto the on-air side of things in a little tiny town called Grand Junction, Colorado. They have the Junior College World Series there. It was an absolute blast. We did the X Games, and from there I jumped to Denver. So this weekend, the Broncos are coming here to play the Dolphins, which should be awesome. So we'll be able to reconnect with a bunch of friends there. And then from Denver, I jumped to Green Bay, covered Aaron Rodgers and the Packers from 2015 to 2020, hosted a regional show there for Fox Sports called Inside the Huddle. I had Jordy Nelson, who was just named today as a first ballot nominee to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So pumped for Jordy. And then Devontae Adams was also my co-host. And got a phone call to come on down to Miami in November of 2020 and been here coming up on 3 years.
All right, well, congrats on that. Josh, something I want to get into that you just mentioned is networking, which is obviously such a valuable skill. For any of our listeners who maybe want to take that next step in their career, what networking advice would you give to them?
I think one thing is to do some research on the people. So for everybody that's like starting to look for a job or wanting to get into the industry, you want to personalize your messages. If you actually get an opportunity to be in front of someone, you hear coaches talk all the time about taking advantage of the opportunity. So to get a form email and say, you know, I'm a student from this college, this is my major, I'm looking to get into this, like separate yourself, do some research, say, hey, I really liked how you did this, or how did you do this? And actually look at some of their stuff. All of us are pretty easy to find. I ain't hard to find. A little Deion Sanders for you. So it's just being able to talk to people and listening, more importantly, and then following up. One thing that I did back in the day, I'm a little bit older, I don't know if it'll work now, but I always sent handwritten notes after somebody met with me. It was just something different. I took that extra step so that you could remember me. It's just like, oh, hey, you wrote me a handwritten note. It meant that I took the time. I really appreciated the time. Or anytime anybody gave me any names to follow up with, I would be sure to follow up with them. And then I would go back and say, thank you for putting me in touch. And it's not necessarily like who you know with networking. It's more of who knows you. And what I mean by that in the sports world is that jobs are gone before they're posted. So you have to be on the top of someone's mind when they're thinking of that there's going to be an opening. So a lot of the times it's already filled by the time the general public gets to know. It's just the way that it works. So it's just being around, it's being available, it's doing stuff like this, and it's staying in touch and just always following up. And then if you do good things in other parts of your own life when you're not with them, you have that credibility that you begin to build. And then it's all about the network of people that you surround yourself with. And you talk about an inverted pyramid. In the beginning, you're trying to crack into the industry and you're meeting all of these people, and then you just kind of build together. And then it gets to a point where people start wanting to connect with you. And then you hopefully, are in a position to pay it forward and help those that helped you along the way and pass that information on.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was great. So Josh, like you said, Miami sports has been just filled with excitement right now. What sports team is your favorite right now in Miami? Like, what was the most exciting team to cover?
Well, right now, because the Heat haven't started yet, I'm going to say the Dolphins.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill is so much fun. If Damian Lillard comes here, which it seems like with 90% certainty that is going to happen, this town is going to be on fire. But Mike McDaniel is so much fun to cover. Tua Tagovailoa is playing his best football. I mentioned that he's the odds-on favorite right now. I know it's early through 2 weeks of the season to win the MVP. What a comeback story that he is. He's a phenomenal person. I think the players inside the Dolphins locker room are just a really fun group of guys. Their personalities are great. So for me, I love covering them. The Canes run to the Final Four was magical. FAU had a really fun run. And, those guys, they didn't get a lot of media coverage up in Boca. So just to see, their faces on the, and be there with them, they were just like so happy to be in that moment. Hopefully they can take a step. I know they locked up their coach for a long time. So very happy that he's sticking around. But without a doubt, it's the Dolphins. And the Panthers. Hockey players are always just fun to cover. You can ask them questions. They give you real answers. You can go grab a beer with them. They're real people. And, I think all of these franchises have a lot in common, and character, I believe, is the common thread. You're not hearing of any of these players getting in any trouble with the law. I've been here 2.5 years. We haven't seen it. And that speaks to the general managers. Bill Zito's done a phenomenal job. Obviously, Pat Riley has been here forever, and the job that he's built with this Heat culture, and Chris Greer with the Dolphins. I mean, they're playing really well. And then the Marlins. I mean, how about this? They're a half game back of a wild card spot with roughly 11 games to play here. So right now, Miami might be the most winning sports city in the country. And we're right in the middle of it. It's special.
Definitely special. And speaking of Tua, like you said, favorite for MVP. Before the season, there was talks that, he might not even play this year with 3 concussions. How did that kind of evolve? Like, was there some worry there in Miami?
From the team's perspective or from the fan base's perspective?
I think a little bit of both.
So basically what happened was when the last concussion occurred in the Christmas Day game against the Packers, they went through a litany of tests, meaning the team, Tua, and his family. And they went around the country to multiple doctors to find out as much information as possible. And when I spoke to Tua, there was a time where he contemplated retirement. That was real. That existed. Mm-hmm. Then you fast forward to March, and the Dolphins picked up his 5th-year option. He's now in his 4th year. So they guaranteed him, not this year, but next year, roughly $25 million. So they said, we're willing to invest this much money in you, regardless of what you decide to do. And whether that was independent of Tua saying, hey, I'm ready to come back or not, we don't know. We don't know if that decision was made prior to that $25 million 5th-year option pickup or not. But once Tua decided to play, he went with Nick Hicks, who owns Perform in Fort Lauderdale. And we saw Tua put on 10 pounds of muscle. We saw him completely dedicate himself this offseason. And he also had a baby in the offseason. He got married. He is now expecting his 2nd child. So I think there's been a lot of life change in this past year for Tua. And he also now has a stronger why because of his growing family. I mean, you forget Tua's young. I mean, I know he's in his 4th season in the league, but I mean, he's 25 years old. So from everyone that I know around him, he's now fully with Athletes First out of Southern California. He switched his agency. They were his marketing agency. Now he is fully on the football side with Athletes First. So he's got a stronger agency around him than he had. He has the people around him that he wants. And, the concern right now is no concern. And if you've watched the first 2 games of the Dolphins season, you're seeing Tua get rid of the ball within the first 2 seconds. He has one of the quickest releases in the NFL. Mike McDaniel has catered the offense, knowing that his offensive line, especially without Teron Armstead, isn't the greatest. So he's playing to his player's skill set, and he's more importantly doing so to protect his quarterback, because we saw last year that when Tua was on the field, this Dolphins team was great. And when he wasn't on the field, they struggled. They know that Tua is going to take them as far as this team can go, and he's the centerpiece. It's not Tyreek Hill. It's the quarterback. That's why The quarterback gets paid the most money in the NFL. And as long as Tua can stay upright, I believe there's been 1 sack through 2 weeks. This team has a legitimate chance, and the concern is very limited. And I think the other point that we saw in the preseason, there was a time where Tua was pushed, and then he was able to flip up and immediately get back onto his feet, which is part of that jiu-jitsu training that he did this offseason. So he is taking what he implemented this offseason to learn how to fall. He's added the extra weight, and now we're seeing all of that translate to the field. So we're seeing him take a step, and the hope is that it can continue, and hopefully the wins continue as well for this Dolphins team, and they should get one this weekend against the Broncos.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Especially after how the Broncos finished this past week, having a 12-point lead against the Commanders, obviously blowing that despite the almost miraculous 2-point conversion at the end. But Josh, I want to get back into your professional career and obviously covering all these successful teams here in South Florida. When it comes to, say, the Dolphins game or a Heat game, how do you prepare for these games, who you're about to interview, all the things that come along with your position?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things. The biggest is institutional knowledge. Luckily, I've been here for 2.5 years. So it's more of being in the locker room every week and talking to these guys and getting to know them on a personal level. And it's also very important with athletes, third-party credibility. You know, they don't know you. So it's how do you add value? How do you earn their trust? And so I listen to them a lot. I make sure to ask them good questions. I read all of the articles that are put out by all of the other writers. I reach out to family members. I follow them on social media to understand what they're like in their personal lives and what they're willing to share. And then there's, you know, a trust factor of where I've been in other places. So I covered the Broncos for 4 years. I was in Green Bay for 5 seasons. And this is my 3rd season now covering the Dolphins. It helps that I work with Drew Rosenhaus. Drew has 12 clients on the Dolphins. But it's also sending players. We talked about doing that extra thing when you meet someone, when you network, to send something like a handwritten note. If I do a segment on Bradley Chubb, I'm going to take the extra step to get him that piece. I'm going to download it. I'm going to send it to him. I'm going to send it to his agent. I'm going to send it to the Dolphins PR staff. Said, hey, you know, this is the work that I do. And when I'm in the locker room, I'm going to say, hey, this is how it turned out. And then you start to build that rapport with all of those players. So for me and my job, you know, local news, no one's watching at 11:45 to get a box score. People already know what the result was. So for me, I'm adding value in a sense of I'm going to get the players to give me actual answers instead of the rehearsed, you know, we just got to put in 100%, you know, one game at a time, and you build that trust. And now I'm giving you different content than you can get elsewhere. So it's multitude of factors, and then you kind of figure out your own style and your own flavor. And, you know, depending on the personalities of the player, like, you know, who you mesh with really well and who you can push a little more. And sometimes it's all give and take. It's a symbiotic relationship. And yeah, I think asking questions and being curious is probably at the center of that. And then, you know, credibility is everything. You have to be honest. You have to be dependable. You have to show up. And the more you're at practice, the more you're around the guys and the more people they see you doing a good job. I think that all leads into prep, which turns into your on-air product or your social media product.
So we had Andy Adler on the show, who's the sideline reporter for the Cowboys. And she said the quickest way to lose trust is by asking those gotcha questions. How do you ask the tough questions and still keep your credibility and stay true with these athletes?
Well, there are PR teams. So for a lot of these gotcha questions, I'm not one to make my name off of a player. That's just not who I am. For me, my job and how I approach my job is that I'm the vessel that is connecting the fan base to the team. And I can put in my own entertainment, my own spin, my own flavor to it. And that's kind of my secret sauce, if you will. So for those tough questions, a lot of times, you know, for example, I'll talk about Drew Rosenhaus. He had Jalen Carter coming out of Georgia, who was projected as the #1 draft pick. He had a issue with a car accident, which he ended up pleading no contest to, that dropped him in the draft. And I spoke to Drew off camera prior to the interview saying, I got to ask you about this. And we were able to talk through it. We were able to work through it and figure out a way that, we could discuss the matter which needed to be discussed, because it's my job as a journalist to ask those questions as opposed to blindsiding him. And, it's the same when I covered, Peyton Manning in his last year with the Broncos when they won a Super Bowl. There was all this talk about he was throwing ducks. He just couldn't throw the ball anymore. And you can phrase it in certain ways. It's very different, when you say to a Hall of Famer, what's going on? I know you had neck surgery. You can't throw the ball anymore. What are you doing out here? Versus saying, hey, what's the challenge in learning how to throw a ball again? And you can phrase it differently. And again, it's talking to him beforehand. It's talking to his team beforehand, and they know it's coming. They're professionals, but it's all about communication. And that's really all that it boils down to. But if you're going to be out there just to, say, I've got you, I mean, then you're doing it for you and not for the game. And for me, it doesn't resonate with me.
Yeah, and I love how Drew didn't even have Jalen visit with teams that were outside of the top 10. Total baller move.
Oh, Drew knows exactly what he's doing. And it's really cool to see behind the scenes sometimes. And, kind of the unspoken thing with agents that they all do during free agency is, they'll call me, they'll call Adam Schefter, and they'll say hey, this team has interest. They'll try to drive up that price. They're in the draft room. Like you mentioned, we're not visiting with top 10 teams. He knew the Eagles were going to take him. He had a relationship with their GM, and they're yeah, we're taking him. They had a bunch of Georgia guys on the team that vouched for him. And we've seen Jalen Carter be the most dominant interior lineman, not just of rookies, but of the entire league throughout the first 2 games with pressures in the backfield. So the talent was there, and they believe they have the people around him to help with the off-field stuff. And you got to remember, these guys are young. They're, 21, 22, 23 years old. Mistakes happen. And, so far, Jalen Carter is proving that he was worth that pick. And the Eagles look like they got a steal where I think they got him 11 overall, if I'm not mistaken. But 9. Yeah, he looks like a great player.
Wait, yeah. Josh, something I'm curious about in this new age of, sports and media, do you think you need to take the more so traditional routes that you or Drew took? Or you think with social media, you can kind of find your way in there without taking the university route, the long route? Do you think we could do it through Instagram, TikTok, things like this?
Absolutely. You've seen people do it already. Going to a journalism school, I can tell you, working for a network, we're hiring kids out of college with no experience because that's what the salaries are. Some jobs still do require a college degree. Do I feel that I went to USC in Los Angeles, to the Annenberg School of Journalism. For me, I do not believe that I would be where I'm at without going through that program. That being said, social media really didn't exist when I went through school, where I went through the traditional route of a small market and all of that. Now, we're seeing people on TikTok. We're seeing Barstool Sports blow up. We're seeing Bleacher Report. We're seeing all of these guys that are breaking down NFL film with no quote unquote traditional journalism background develop these huge followings. So I think if you've got great content, people are going to find you, but it's the content that separates you. And as soon as you find what people are looking for, they begin to follow you. You can do whatever you want. The sky's the limit. So I love breaking rules. I love breaking boundaries. And as long as you are truthful in your reporting and you're not, a Twitter warrior, I think there is a huge chance to do this as a quote unquote influencer. And if you've got that secret sauce, why not? Just because it hasn't been done, it's not that you can't do it. It just means that you haven't done it yet. So I'm all for it.
Yeah. And Josh, funny you say that. After the amazing Colorado State game on Saturday, I was looking all over for, post-game interviews, press conferences, and the only place that had them was TikTok. Just people posting what was up. You couldn't find it on Twitter.
Right. So in that situation, we're seeing people move away from Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it now, where especially for college kids and younger people, Snapchat and TikTok are where it's at. We're seeing Instagram hang on. Everyone was on Facebook in 2005 when it was first invented, but now younger generations aren't using that anymore. Just like no one's staying up to watch an 11:45 newscast to get their sports scores because they all have them on their phone. And now with AI and all of these clips being put all over social media instantaneously when these games are still going on, it's changed the game. And from the athletic department perspective, especially after a game like that, CU, CSU, I've covered. It's called the Rocky Mountain Showdown. Those are big, big games. And from the athletic department, you're wanting to minimize risk. And with what happened with Travis Hunter and the hits and the way that game was played out, you want to limit all that information so that you can talk to your kids. You want to figure out what message you want to convey. Pete Carroll was really the first person to figure this out in the mid 2000s at USC. And now we're seeing athletic departments control their own message. And so those mainstream media outlets, they're not pushing that. We're seeing TikTok become the place. Shoot, we saw Travis Hunter do a live stream on Bleacher Report as opposed to talking to journalists. And now with NIL money, he's getting paid to do that. He's got to go to a press conference and talk for free. So good for him. I love what Prime is doing in CU. And if you're a top recruit in the country, especially a skill player or DB specifically, I'm saying forget Alabama. I'm saying forget Georgia. I'm going to play for Prime. I want to be a part of that culture. And now the question becomes, if this team keeps winning, how long is he going to stick around Boulder? Because I think he would get a big time job offer from an SEC school.
Well, and do you think he would get an offer from an NFL team?
He's come out and specifically said that he doesn't want to work in the NFL because he doesn't believe that he can motivate millionaires. But we're seeing some of these kids in college make millions of dollars. Prime can do whatever he wants to do. And I think if you give him any sort of doubt, he's going to say, I'm going to do this just to prove you wrong. That's been his personality for years. I used to work with him when I first started the NFL Network. He was on a show with Michael Irvin called NFL Game Day Live. Here you have a man that amputated 2 toes because he didn't want to miss more games as a head coach at Jackson State. So I don't think there's anything that could deter this man from doing anything. And I think his 2 kids are special, especially Shador.
Totally. And Josh, something I know we're busy. We got some time restraints here, but in terms of what you saw this past April out of the Panthers, have you ever seen anything like that out of a hockey team, let alone in South Florida? What was your reaction to that whole thing?
I thought it was great. I love their general manager, Bill Zito. He's one of my favorite people. I love hanging out with him. Very, very smart man. Look, Sasha Barkov is, in my opinion, one of the best players in the NHL, and he does all of the little things. And I think the combination of him and Matthew Tkachuk is special. And when you went back and look at this trade, you're like, we're trading Jonathan Huberdeau, we're getting Mackenzie Weegar away, like for Matthew Tkachuk, we're like, is this going to work out? And I think it was a perfect trade. And I think with the pieces around those two, it was a special run. I think Paul Maurice was a great fit to bring in as a head coach, a little bit more experience. He had wins in the playoffs. And in hockey, you just have to get hot. And, we saw it with, I hate to say it, Tampa Bay with the over the cap situation. It's just a matter of staying healthy. I truly believe that if the Panthers were healthy, I think they could have won this thing. Tkachuk going down with a broken sternum in Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Finals was brutal. Just so many injuries throughout the postseason. That's it. It's the same in the NFL. It's the same in the NBA. You've just got to be healthy at the right time. And they just ran out of gas. And they were so close. But to be all in the year before and then to make it back this year, I would definitely say that they overachieved. And now that they were really over the cap, it's sad to see Radko Gudas go. He was phenomenal. Anthony Duclair is one of my favorite people. It's sad to see him go, but unfortunately that's the business. But a special run, and it's Cats Media Day coming up here, and I hope that they have a great season now at Amarant Arena. They just had a new naming rights deal. It's going to be a fun one to say.
Yeah, it was a great experience watching down here in South Florida. Josh, another question I have for you is, we talked about it a little before the episode began. Can you talk to us about your relationship with Jim Nantz?
So it really started with a friend of mine, Anthony Calhoun. And AC is a sports reporter in Indianapolis at Wish TV. He hosts this amazing golf tournament every year. I would call it the celebrity golf tournament of the summer. And he and AC go way, way back. And we talked about networking. And when I was in Grand Junction, it's my first TV market, just outside of Aspen, there was this golf tournament called the Trash Masters. And there's this lovely man. His name is Boone Schweitzer that had a relationship with Jim. And Jim was a donor to this tournament. And from there, he put me in touch. And then, being around, and as we talked about networking, he's represented by Sandy Montag. And, as you're at all of these events, you're around all of these people. And then, you find out more things in common. I went to USC. Jim's daughter went to USC. She just got married a couple weeks ago. So big congrats to her. Jim lives on Pebble Beach. So it's finding people that live there. You can build that relationship. He just moved to Nashville. Awesome backyard, replicated Amen's Corner. If you're a golf fanatic, wow. It is a must see. And, my uncle happened to live in Nashville, or it's finding people. So it's, you learn to stay in touch and you find more connections, but it goes back to, being a good person, and people want to surround themselves with good people. So it's kind of just been growing over the years. And, it's like making sure when I'm in Green Bay, if he was doing a game in Green Bay with Tony, I'm going up to the booth to go say hi to Jim. It's, and then you build, and then, all of a sudden an email comes, or, your phone number comes, then it becomes a text conversation. Then it's, hey, I've got a contract offer. Like, what do I do? And, it's just, he is arguably, in my opinion, one of the best to ever do it. One of the most generous people you will ever meet. And I think the coolest thing about sports, more so than the athletes, it's just the people that you get to meet and the experiences you get to have. So I'll be honest, I started in Grand Junction. My first salary I signed for was $19,000 a year. I qualified for food stamps. And it was a tough sledding, those first couple years. And, it's all worth it with the people that you meet. And Jim is certainly one of the most special people in this business, and is no doubt a Hall of Famer in my book.
Yeah, we were fortunate enough to meet Jim at the 2021 Ryder Cup up at Whistling Straits. Couldn't have been more friendly, couldn't have been more, open, just extremely great experience getting to hear someone we listen to every weekend. So very cool.
Yeah. You got to go in the booth. Like to hear him call golf live is like standing there. It's just the voice. You just hear it in your head. It's the best. And I most genuine man. And here he is, he gave up covering, the NCAA tournament to spend more time with his family. He's got, young boys, and, family came first, and he realized, I have to pass this off. And, he's just a special human being. And Jim, there are few better than that man right there, both on and off the microphone.
The epitome of a legend. And Josh, before we let you go, I got one more question. For those listening who maybe aren't in South Florida, try to describe to them what the Messi impact has been like. Obviously, we had to get into that, but briefly tell our listeners what that even means.
Well, the Messi effect is the only thing I can equate it to, and it may be bigger because it's more on an international scale, is like LeBron making the decision to come to South Beach and creating the big three. Mm-hmm. I'm talking home prices. People want to move here because they want to see Messi in person. We've seen, from an economic standpoint, I believe Apple has added more than 200 million people to their live stream service just to watch Messi play. We're talking about a ticket to go see Messi at Dry Pink Stadium. They play tomorrow night. Go for over $500 a ticket. You can pay $5 a ticket, prior to Messi coming to watch. You're seeing a team, Inter Miami, that was in last place in the MLS, go on to win the League's Cup. You're talking about internationally, social media exploding. I want to say it's more than 15x what it was before Messi came. We're seeing jersey sales reach the hundreds of millions of dollars internationally. I mean, they have basically gone from this run-of-the-mill MLS team that no one's heard of to being up there with names like his former places he's played. People are talking like Inter Miami, like Barcelona, like PSG. You could argue that Manchester United, even these huge soccer powerhouses, people want to watch Messi. And for him, I'd say that he's been more than advertised on the field. He's been in 11 matches. He's got 11 goals. We've seen this team hasn't lost with him playing. So it's special. I mean, shoot, he's at the grocery store with his family. Like, people go crazy. He ate at this Argentinian pizza spot the other day, and he just posted a picture because the guy's from Argentina. The next day, there was a line around the corner. Same thing. He was at an Adidas store on South Beach. I mean, people are stopping to see this man. They just want to see him in person. There was a young boy had his phone out, and he kissed him on the cheek, and the kid went crazy. So I mean, Messi, I think, is the biggest star in Miami. Sorry, Gloria Estefan, or Shakira, but Messi is the biggest in Miami. Jimmy Butler will probably tell you that, he's the biggest superstar, but that's just his personality. But Messi is special from an economic standpoint. He has completely changed the landscape of not only MLS soccer, but soccer in America, and really the Miami market, making this even more international. And there's direct flights, from Argentina. So the realtors are hoping that people move here, especially when this new stadium is built, which is right by the airport. It is Messi-Mania, and this is the mecca of sports, and Messi, no doubt, is at the top of it.
And just amazing timing, too, with the World Cup here in 2.5 years.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be special. I mean, that's a huge part of it. Hopefully Messi plays in that. Yeah. We know that he was just with the Argentinian national team for the qualifier in this last international window, but he's 36 years old. So, we're seeing players, Tom Brady, if you will, playing a little bit later. We saw, you never know with him. I mean, he looks like he's in great shape. And I mean, honestly, the MLS soccer, I'll be honest, it's not great. There's a completely different level with him, Busquets, Jordi Alba. It's very evident on the field. So if he can stay healthy, it seems like his head is still in there. He wants to be here. And then you talk about the back end deal of just paying $25 million to get an MLS team. I mean, David Beckham has been so smart. Inter Miami is worth a boatload. I don't know what the total figure is now, but probably over $1 billion once this real estate deal goes through with this new stadium. Messi didn't need the money from, Saudis. So, he's here in Miami. He's bought multiple homes. He wants to be here. This is where he feels safe, wants to be. His kids are in school up by you guys in Boca. And, special time.
Awesome.
Josh, it's been a lot of fun for us. We know you're extremely busy, so can't tell you how grateful we are for your time, man. Thank you.
You got it, guys. Anytime you need me, I'm here.
Thanks, Josh. See you guys next week.